If you've spent thousands on that RV thinking it's your ticket out when the grid goes down, you need to hear this before it's too late. Most preppers believe their motorhome or trailer is the ultimate bug-out vehicle, a mobile fortress that'll carry them to safety when an EMP strike turns every modern convenience into useless metal and plastic. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. That RV parked in your driveway could become your coffin on wheels, and the reasons why might shock you. Before we dive into what could go wrong and how to actually survive an EMP event with a vehicle strategy that works, hit that subscribe button because this channel doesn't sugarcoat survival. We tell you what you need to know even when it hurts. And if you're serious about making it through the chaos ahead, leave a comment below telling us your backup plan. Because what we're about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about mobile survival. Let's start with what an EMP actually does to vehicles. Because the internet is full of myths and half-truths that could get you killed. An electromagnetic pulse, whether from a high-altitude nuclear detonation or a solar superstorm, releases a massive burst of electromagnetic radiation that induces electrical currents in conductive materials. Modern RVs are rolling computer networks with dozens of electronic control units managing everything from fuel injection to brake systems to climate control. When that pulse hits, it doesn't just kill your radio, it can fry the engine control module, destroy the transmission computer, blow out the alternator, and turn your sophisticated diesel pusher into a 30-ton paperweight. The 2008 EMP Commission report to Congress found that vehicles with extensive electronic systems are far more vulnerable than older mechanical vehicles, and your 2020 luxury motorhome with its touchscreen displays and automated leveling jacks is about as electronically dense as vehicles get. But the electronic vulnerability is just the beginning of why your RV is a death trap in an EMP scenario. Think about what happens in the first hours after the pulse hits. Every modern vehicle on every highway suddenly dies, creating instant gridlock across the entire transportation network. Your RV, assuming it even starts, is now trying to navigate through a maze of dead cars, panicking drivers, and growing chaos. RVs are massive, they require wide turns, clear roads, and functioning infrastructure. When you're piloting a 40-foot Class A motorhome that's nearly 14 feet tall and weighs 20,000 pounds, you can't squeeze between abandoned vehicles, you can't take back roads designed for compact cars, and you definitely can't go off-road when the highways become parking lots. You're stuck, visible, and vulnerable, exactly where you don't want to be when society starts unraveling. The fuel situation makes everything worse. Most RVs get somewhere between 6 to 12 miles per gallon, meaning you're burning through your tank faster than almost any other vehicle type. After an EMP, gas stations won't work because their pumps require electricity, their payment systems are fried, and their supply chains have collapsed. You might have jerry cans strapped to your RV with an extra 50 gallons, thinking you're prepared, but let's do the math. If your motorhome gets 8 miles per gallon, and you need to travel 300 miles to your bug-out location, you need at least 37 gallons just for the trip, assuming perfect conditions with no detours, no traffic, and no wasted fuel idling in gridlock. Those extra 50 gallons might get you there with fuel to spare, but what about the return trip if your location isn't viable? What about running the generator to power your RV's systems? What about the reality that you'll be stuck in traffic burning fuel just to move a few miles per hour? The numbers don't work, and that's before we consider that everyone else on the road is now desperate for fuel, and your RV is a giant rolling gas tank that broadcasts its presence to anyone looking for resources. Now let's talk about visibility and security, because your RV is the opposite of gray man philosophy. In a collapse scenario, you want to be invisible, forgettable, just another desperate person trying to survive. Your luxury motorhome with its slide-outs, roof-mounted solar panels, and satellite dish screams wealth, preparation, and resources. You become an immediate target for everyone who didn't prepare, everyone who's hungry, everyone who's armed and desperate. RV windows are large and provide minimal protection compared to a standard vehicle. The doors are designed for convenience, not security, with locks that can be forced open with a crowbar in seconds. The thin aluminum and fiberglass walls won't stop bullets, won't stop determined attackers, and won't hide the light and noise coming from inside when you're trying to remain undetected. You can't camouflage an RV, you can't hide it in the woods, and you can't park it anywhere without drawing attention. Every minute you're in that vehicle after the collapse, you're advertising yourself as a target. The maintenance reality is something RV owners don't want to face. These vehicles are maintenance nightmares even under normal conditions with access to parts, tools, and mechanics. RV forums are filled with owners complaining about constant breakdowns, failed systems, and expensive repairs. Now imagine trying to keep that complex machine running when there are no parts available, no mechanics, no way to order a replacement water pump or fix a blown tire. RV tires are expensive and specialized, often requiring specific load ratings that you can't just scavenge from abandoned cars. The propane systems, water systems, electrical systems, and mechanical systems all require regular maintenance and are prone to failure. A single blown tire on a dual-axle trailer can make it impossible to move. A failed water pump means no access to your fresh water tank. A broken generator means no power for your appliances. In a long-term grid-down scenario, your RV becomes a liability that requires constant attention and resources you don't have. Here's what most preppers get wrong about bug-out vehicles. They focus on comfort and capacity instead of reliability and discretion. They want their home on wheels with all the amenities, thinking they'll ride out the apocalypse in air-conditioned luxury. But survival isn't about comfort. It's about making hard choices that keep you alive. The best bug-out vehicle isn't the biggest or the most feature-packed. It's the one that's reliable, fuel-efficient, repairable with basic tools, and doesn't make you a target. We're talking about older vehicles from the 1980s or early 1990s with minimal electronics, preferably diesel engines that can run on alternative fuels if necessary, with manual transmissions that don't require computers to shift. A 1985 Toyota pickup truck with a camper shell is 1,000 times more viable than a 2022 Winnebago, even though it's less comfortable. That old truck can be repaired with basic mechanical knowledge, parts can be scavenged from other vehicles, it can navigate through tight spaces and rough terrain, and it doesn't broadcast your presence to every desperate person within visual range. Let's address the Faraday cage myth because this comes up constantly in prepper circles. Some people claim you can protect your RV's electronics by turning it into a Faraday cage, wrapping critical components in aluminum foil, or installing conductive mesh around sensitive systems. In theory, a proper Faraday cage can protect electronics from EMP, but the reality of doing this with a vehicle is far more complex than most people understand. The vehicle's body already acts as a partial Faraday cage, but modern vehicles have so many electronic systems interconnected through wiring harnesses that run throughout the entire structure that protecting everything is nearly impossible. You'd need to disconnect and shield every electronic component, every sensor, every control module, and then somehow reconnect everything after the pulse without introducing vulnerabilities. Even professional EMP hardening for military vehicles is an extensive and expensive process that requires specialized knowledge and equipment. Your DIY aluminum foil wrap job isn't going to cut it, and betting your survival on untested amateur EMP protection is gambling with your life. The weight and mobility factor is critical and often overlooked. RVs are heavy, which means they get stuck easily on soft ground, struggle with steep inclines, and can't traverse rough terrain. When the roads are blocked and you need to take an alternate route through fields or forest access roads, your RV simply can't follow. You're limited to paved roads and maintained highways, which means you're stuck on the same routes as everyone else, facing the same gridlock, the same roadblocks, and the same threats. A lighter, more agile vehicle can take back roads, cross ditches, navigate around obstacles, and access locations that are impossible for RVs. In a scenario where mobility means survival, being locked into predictable routes on major highways is a fatal disadvantage. Weather vulnerability is another factor that makes RVs dangerous in collapse scenarios. These vehicles are designed for fair weather camping, not for surviving extreme conditions without infrastructure support. In winter, an RV without power becomes an icebox, and running a propane heater 24/7 will deplete your fuel supplies in days. In summer heat, without air conditioning or even proper ventilation when you can't safely open windows, the interior becomes dangerously hot. RVs aren't insulated like permanent structures. They lose heat rapidly and gain heat rapidly, making temperature regulation a constant challenge. Your home's insulation and thermal mass help maintain stable temperatures, But your RV's thin walls and large windows make it nearly impossible to maintain comfort without consuming resources. Social dynamics and group survival present another problem with RVs. Most RV layouts are designed for small families or couples, not for the extended family or community groups that often form the basis of successful long-term survival. If your survival plan involves meeting up with family members or joining a community of like-minded preppers, your RV doesn't have space for additional people, adequate storage for extra supplies, or the capacity to serve as anything other than a temporary shelter for a very small group. In contrast, a smaller bug-out vehicle that gets you to a pre-established location where real shelter and community exist is far more practical. The RV mentality assumes you're surviving alone or with just your immediate family, which is statistically a much more dangerous approach than community-based survival. The psychological factor is real and dangerous. RV owners have invested significant money and emotional energy into their vehicles. They've customized them, upgraded them, and built their entire bug-out plan around them. This creates cognitive bias where they refuse to acknowledge the vehicle's limitations, because doing so means admitting they've wasted resources and need to start over with their planning. This is the sunk cost fallacy in action, and it kills preppers who can't adapt when their original plan proves unworkable. If you're reading this and feeling defensive about your RV, that's the bias talking. The question isn't whether you've already invested in an RV, it's whether you're willing to acknowledge reality and adjust your plans before it's too late. So, what should you do instead? First, understand that bug-out vehicles are just one part of a larger strategy, not the entire plan. Your primary survival location should be established and stocked long before disaster strikes. The vehicle's job is simply to get you there, not to serve as your long-term shelter. Choose reliability over comfort every single time. Look for vehicles with proven track records, simple mechanical systems, and widespread parts availability. Older Jeeps, Toyota Land Cruisers, vintage pickup trucks, and even certain motorcycles offer better survival profiles than any RV. Keep the vehicle maintained and ready. Store extra fuel using proper rotation schedules, and practice driving your bug-out route under different conditions so you know alternative paths when the main roads fail. Second, diversify your transportation options. Don't put all your survival hopes into a single vehicle. Have a bicycle, have a motorcycle, have hiking gear and supplies that let you move on foot if necessary. Store caches along your route so you're not dependent on carrying everything in one trip. Know multiple ways to reach your destination, including routes that don't require vehicles at all. The pros who actually survive aren't the ones with the fanciest gear. They're the ones with multiple backup plans and the flexibility to adapt when the primary plan fails. Third, focus on the real priorities: water, food, shelter, security, and community. Your vehicle should support these priorities, not replace them. A small, efficient vehicle that gets you to a location with a well and a garden is infinitely better than a luxury RV that leaves you stranded on a highway with no resources. Think about what actually keeps humans alive, not what makes evacuation comfortable. Comfort is temporary. Survival is about making the hard choices that keep you breathing. Fourth, test your plan now while the consequences are manageable. Load your vehicle with the supplies you'd actually carry during evacuation. Drive your planned route during rush hour to see what traffic is really like. Try living in your vehicle for a weekend without using campground hookups to understand what works and what doesn't. Most preppers never test their plans and only discover the flaws when it's too late to fix them. Testing reveals the gap between theory and reality, and that gap is where people die. The truth about EMP survival isn't complicated, but it requires honesty about what works and what doesn't. RVs represent a fantasy of comfortable evacuation where you maintain your lifestyle while the world collapses around you. That fantasy gets people killed because they prioritize comfort over functionality and ignore the fundamental realities of vehicle survival. The size that seems like an advantage becomes a liability. The features that seem essential become failure points. The investment that seems smart becomes a sunk cost that clouds judgment. Real survival means accepting that you might lose everything. It means planning for the worst-case scenario where your primary plan fails and your backup plan fails and you're down to your last option. It means choosing tools and strategies that work when everything else has fallen apart. Your RV isn't that tool. It's too complex, too visible, too dependent on infrastructure, and too vulnerable to both electronic failure and human threats. The vehicle that actually saves your life is probably sitting unused because it's not as comfortable, not as spacious, and not as impressive as the motorhome you wanted to believe would work. If you currently own an RV and it's too late to change your entire strategy, at least acknowledge its limitations and plan accordingly. Keep a secondary vehicle that's simpler and more reliable. Store supplies at your destination so you're not dependent on what you can carry in one trip. Learn mechanical skills so you can make field repairs. Practice OPSEC so you're not broadcasting your presence. Have a plan for abandoning the RV if it becomes a liability rather than an asset. Most importantly, be mentally prepared to let it go when continuing to use it puts your survival at risk. The coming years are going to test every prepper's plans. Economic instability, grid vulnerabilities, geopolitical tensions, and natural disasters are all increasing in frequency and severity. An EMP event, whether from enemy action or solar activity, is a real threat that could happen tomorrow or next decade. When it does, the people who survive won't be the ones with the most expensive gear or the biggest vehicles. They'll be the ones who made smart choices based on real-world limitations and adaptable strategies. They'll be the ones who tested their plans, acknowledged their mistakes, and fixed problems before those problems became fatal. Don't let your RV be the mistake that costs you everything. Reevaluate your strategy now while you still have time. Choose reliability over comfort. Choose discretion over convenience. Choose proven simplicity over complex features. And most importantly, choose survival over fantasy. Because when the pulse hits and the grid goes down, reality doesn't care about your investment or your dreams. It only cares about whether you made the choices that keep you alive. And if you want to go deeper into EMP preparedness, vehicle selection, and survival strategies that actually work, check the pinned comment for guides and documents that cover everything we couldn't fit into this video. They're there when you're ready to take your preparation to the next level. Now get out there and make the hard choices before they're made for you. Like this video, if reality checks matter more than comfortable lies, share it with someone whose RV plan needs a serious rethink, and comment below with your actual bug-out vehicle strategy. This channel exists for people who want the truth, not fairy tales, so subscribe and let's keep having these real conversations about survival. The world isn't getting safer, and the preppers who make it through the chaos ahead are the ones willing to face uncomfortable truths today.